Congratulations, you've decided to pursue law. But now what? Hi, and welcome to the Law Simplified, the world's largest independent online law school platform. I'm your instructor, Shavin Bandad-Nayaka. Many across the globe aspire to become a solicitor, a barrister, or a legal professional. Law is an alluring area to pursue, and once you get into it, as a student in your first, second, or third years, or as a practitioner, as a solicitor or barrister in different parts of the world, it can be lucrative on the one hand and fulfilling on the other. If you like the type of content that I make on this YouTube channel, as well as the different platforms the Law Simplified is disseminated on, do subscribe to the Law Simplified channel and leave a comment below for any type of video relating to the academics or the career prospects of law that you'd want to see. What's more, have a look at the comprehensive online law school platform, complete with theory, tutorial and workshop sessions that I've conducted with first-class law students from around the world. Now this video is going to be a bit longer than most of my other videos, and the reason why is I realized that from the 350 odd videos on this YouTube channel, as well as the different career guidance tips and tricks that I've provided over the years for my fast track and masterclass students, it's not consolidated into one solid output. And what I mean by that is there's no single video that I can pinpoint to say, hey, you know what, if you're a student, here's, or if you're a prospective student at that, here's what you should look at before commencing any qualification, any degree for that matter. Now, this video is under the presumption that you have already decided to pursue your academics in law and then pursue a career in law as well. So I'm not going to talk about whether you should do law in the first place. There's plenty of videos in relation to that I've done, either in the How to Ace a Law Exam playlist, or more importantly, the Career Guidance playlist, which you can find on this YouTube channel, and I'll link to them in the description below. This video is more catered towards understanding what you should be doing as your initial steps, having decided you're going to pursue your academics in law, and then subsequently your career in law as well. But that will be for a later video. Right, now you've decided to pursue law. What's step number one? The first thing that you should do is to forget about university rankings. What do I mean by this? Oftentimes, prospective students who would later enroll in my fast track or masterclass programs would reach out for guidance on selection of universities, because that's the very first thing that you should do in terms of determining what pathway you're going to take in law. And oftentimes the constant back and forth that I get is, well, this X university is ranked high on this particular list, or that Y university does well in this particular area. What I often tell these students is, do not select the best university, rather select the best university for you. Now, how does one go about doing this? The best university for you is determined based on a number of factors. On the one hand, it might be your personal life circumstances, where you are currently based, for example. Are you in a financial or a personal capacity to be able to travel to a university in a different jurisdiction, in a different country altogether? If not, do these universities that you're prospectively looking out for offer distance learning or remote learning opportunities? On the other hand, whether you are relatively sure about what potential area in law that you're going into, and if you're not, whether the university or the institution that you're going to select provides sufficient options and a vast array of topics at that, so that once you get into your foundation or your first year, you'll be able to slowly determine which area that you're most comfortable with, and then have the options in terms of elective modules to select. So it's not about what's the best university out there, because that's very cookie cutter. It's supposed to be what's the best university for you, for your specific circumstances. Right. Once you've identified those potential features that you're looking for in a university. The ability to perhaps go with distance learning as an option, the array of topics and the subjects that they do provide. You'll be able to filter out essentially maybe a dozen or so universities from the thousands that are out there. The next step is to have a look at the breakdown of the assessments. Now, this is easier said than done, and it does take some effort and some research as well, and you'll be lucky if you have an opportunity to perhaps reach out to a student ambassador for this university. Most universities do provide student ambassadors and individuals who've gone through and then has success in the career that they'd want to be able to help out any other prospective student as well, and I do urge you to reach out to them. The reason why I've sort of suggested to go after student ambassadors identified by the university as opposed to lecturers or professors is, from personal experience, I can tell you it's very rare that you'll hear back from the university on time or a lecturer or a professor on time. What's more, if you are proactive a bit, regardless of a particular student ambassador being provided for by the university, I would actually do a graph search on, let's say, LinkedIn or a professional social network of that caliber to see if you can identify, perhaps not at a higher tier, but a mid-tier or a student who has just graduated and perhaps entered into the workplace in terms of that university, so that you can just drop a message and say, hey, I'm a prospective student. I'd like to find out a little bit more about the method by which the delivery of academics is conducted at the university. 9 out of 10 times you'll have relatively wholesome graduates who are more than willing to help out. Now, the reason why I say this is because not everyone is good at examinations. And the current rubric and the method by which assessments are done in universities in most jurisdictions are bifurcated into two formats. You have some universities that essentially prepare you over a semester and then you're supposed to sit for an examination. Seen or unseen, but a timed examination nonetheless at the end of your semester. And it accounts for 100% of the weight of that module. Some universities opt to do it slightly differently. They'll break it apart into bits where perhaps 50% is by an end of semester assessment, and the rest of it is via class participation, attendance, as well as assignment submissions, where you'll have a 2,500 word or 3,000 word essay for a particular module that you have to submit, and then they give you a grade at a particular point of time before your examinations. Now, from experience, having taught hundreds of students, if not thousands of students, over the past 9.5 years, nearly 10 years, I've identified that students are not really bad when it comes to assessments. And what I mean by that is that they're very knowledgeable, they do have the ability to articulate ideas, but it's not for everyone. Not everyone gets examined well. They are unable to essentially perform at a 0-hour system, which is what you generally get in a timed examination context, but they perform incredibly well when it comes to an assignment submission, where a problem is given ahead of time with advanced material, and then you have about a couple of weeks, maybe a month or two to prep and then submit at a particular deadline. So know yourself a bit more when you think about the format that the university, or from the dozen or so universities that you filtered, the way they go about it. Because you don't want to get into a university and into a qualification that examines you or that assesses you in a manner that A, you're not comfortable with, and B, you won't be able to perform in either. So the second aspect, as I mentioned, is determine the method of assessment. How do these universities go about testing you? Having done that, your dozen or so universities would trickle down further into perhaps a handful of universities. You've essentially now filtered out based on the ability for delivery of academics, is it distance learning or otherwise, the array of subjects that are offered, and then you've also filtered it beyond that by looking at the method by which the assessments are done, whether it's something that you are personally comfortable with. Now, the third thing that you're going to have to look at, and arguably this will not just filter it further, but it will actually give you one or two at best universities that you really need to think about, is determining if at all you are willing to cope up with that financial commitment. Now, this is often the situation in which most students will tend to fall back. They'll look at the fees, they'll look at the method of payment, and they might even see whether there are any scholarships or bursaries available, and it might be insufficient, and in which case you might step aside and you might sort of park this idea altogether. But I'm going to give you a little heads up on something that you can do to try and alleviate this problem. Usually, if you are going for a university that does have outreach campuses in other parts of the world, and this is in fact the case if you're coming from a jurisdiction like the Middle East, Southeast Asia, try and find an institution or an outreach satellite campus that is based in one of these other locations. Chances are you might actually be able to get a greater opportunity at a much lower cost to do this qualification at those locations. Now, I'm unable to give you advice on what universities to pursue because arguably it's a very personal and unique decision to you. Having gone through that process of trying to identify the universities that fit the bill, that fit the mold essentially, and the assessment method, now you should go about looking at the most optimum financial option out there. To give you one quick example, however, and this is by no means an endorsement of this university. Trust me, I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of this as well. Being a graduate of this university myself, is the University of London International Programs. It's one of the programs that's undertaken by students from all around the world, and you have students all the way from, let's say, the Western Hemisphere to the complete East, to remote parts of the world as well. And the unique aspect of this particular qualification, the international programs, is that it can be done completely via distance learning and independently, without an institution or without having a physical university in place. Arguably, guidance by an institution or a tutor or a mentor makes perfect sense, but it need not be the case. The reason why I'm mentioning this university, however, is by virtue of the fact that relatively it is more cost effective than most other universities. And granted, it might not have the widest range of elective modules to pursue, but subsequently, if you do consider following an LLM or a master's in law, there are other benefits of doing a University of London degree, since it opens up the avenue to other bursaries and scholarships in the LLM program that the University of London collegiates offer. But that's one example. Once again, it's not an endorsement, it's just from a personal experience that I'm speaking to you. Because the selection of the university, as you would have noticed from this video, is very personal to you. It's not the best university that you're going out for, it's the university that is best for you. So, to recap, the 3 stages of your decision-making process, having decided that you're going to pursue law. Number 1, look at the modalities of the university. Think about the manner in which the academics are delivered. Can you opt for distance learning or remote learning? Are you able to financially cope with going on campus and studying for 3 years or more? And on the other hand, if you haven't decided the specific area that you're going to go for, do they have sufficient electives available so that you can pursue a broader horizon in terms of your academics? Step number 2 is, once you have filtered out the universities from the thousands of universities in that step 1, determine, if at all, in what manner the assessments are conducted. Is it a end of semester 100% weighted seen or unseen exam, or is it by virtue of a staggered stream of assignments, class participation, as well as an exam at the end of the semester? What are you most comfortable with? How are you best tested? Is it something that's going to work for you? And the third and final thing, once you've filtered that into a couple of options, is look at what options are there to be financially viable. Most of these qualifications, at least on campus, even in a distance learning format, might be relatively expensive. See if the universities that you have now trickled down to and you're going to select from whether they have outreach campuses or institutions that provide a localized format of that qualification. Usually in the Middle East or in East Asia, you have options of this caliber, and more often than not, they will have a distance learning option as well if you so choose. The selection of a university and a qualification at that, when you've decided to pursue law, is a very personal one. Don't decide based on what someone else is telling you, because what worked for them will not essentially or may not essentially work for you. Go through those steps. Understand what you really want out of this qualification. And chances are, you're not just going to pass but ace the examination, but moving on, you're going to ace in your career as well. That being said, until the next time that we meet, have fun, stay safe, and as always, obey the law.